What is up, everybody? We're talking dynasty sells today here on the channel. We're going to be talking about 4 players that we think that you should pivot off of, or just deals that are being done out there that you might want to try to go offer. So we're going to be looking at 4 players, their value. We're going to be looking at actual dynasty trades that are happening out there in leagues. And then we're also going to be going through our rankings here at the TDR and looking kind of where you might be able to pivot to, where's some value at. Do you want to tier up or can you tier down? Because it's not just a dynasty sales video where I throw out 4 players. I want to give you actionable content to help you out. So let's get into it. And you know what? Like everybody, we're going to start with our guy, Kyren Williams, because he is a hot topic out there in dynasty. What should you do with Kyren Williams, right? So when you're thinking of where his value is at, and over there, I love the dynasty trade value chart from Fantasy Calc. They do a great job of showing you kind of how their value has improved, their rankings and everything there. You see the numbers, right? 1,200 yards during the season, 12 touchdowns in 12 games. He was the second best running back behind CMC this year. And when you're looking at it from points per game, and you're looking at it just from efficiency, him and CMC were neck and neck. But what do we do with him, right? So when we're thinking of what are they going to do moving forward, will they kind of bring a guy in? You see the injury history that Kyren Williams has kind of had, under 200 pounds, right? So sub 200. I think there's a lot of red flags in that profile. Now, where he's getting ranked, it's across the board, right? Keep trade cut, running back 6. Football guys actually has him running back 5. Here at the TDR, we have him at running back 9. So the question is, does it matter, right? I see that a lot. Like he might be running back 5. He might be running back 9. But when you're looking at running backs in Dynasty, it's more, what are they doing for us lately, right? What's that next game going to look like? Because the validity of the position. So when I think of like what we're trying to like look at with Kyren Williams, look at these deals, right? So these are 12-team Superflex deals. Straight up for 104, I would do that deal, right? So you're getting into the second tier. Maybe some people think the first tier. Malik Neighbors is in there, Jaden Daniels, those guys, Brock Bowers. If you can flip Kyren for that, that is probably the right move to make, right? Because that 104 is going to hold value. Even now, if these deals happen this week, if you can flip Kyren for the 104, possibly. Now, you're going to get some naysayers out there. You're going to get those hardcore dynasty people out there who I love so much in the comments. You guys are great. That would never happen in my league. Yo, bro, listen, we make content for everybody here. It might happen because there are a lot of people that like Kyren Williams, and they are still kind of in that redraft mindset of running backs are king, right? And there are definitely dynasty analysts out there that think running backs are king. So 104 might be able to kind of flip. It's outside that first tier of Marvin Harrison Jr., Caleb Williams. You might be able to offer it and see what they do. Remember, what's the worst they could do? Decline it, right? Just send it, baby. And that's just kind of how we roll, right? We think of, hey, maybe you can get in that top 5 picks. Kyren Williams for Jalen Waddle, right? That's another guy. To me, Waddle is getting severely undervalued right now based on just the dynasty market. I still have him as a top 8 wide receiver out there, but he has definitely slipped down the market. If you can get a guy like Jalen Waddle, who might move on from Miami, might stay in Miami, when you're thinking of kind of his value in that offense, could be a wide receiver one somewhere else, I would definitely look at that for Jalen Waddle, and you might be able to get a plus something, right? If Keep Trade Cut has him at running back 6, Waddle outside the top 10, you might be able to get something extra added on. Then Tua and Kyren for Jordan Love and Michael Pittman. I like the Jordan Love and Michael Pittman side. I think Love has kind of solidified himself as that QB above Tua. I like Michael Pittman as a wide receiver too. I think moving forward, he's a safer aspect, right? I think the Tua Kyren side is like the ceiling play. The Jordan Love, Michael Pittman is more of the safer play in terms of that deal there. Now, when we're looking at where we have them, so these are our kind of our tiers, and we're looking at our running back rankings. Running back 1 through 5, essentially those 5 guys are, those are the guys that we're looking at is still getting drafted in the first 3 rounds of startup drafts right now. Then you have, that tier 2 type, area here. Devon, Etienne, Walker, Kyren, Saquon, right? So you kind of have those guys. And then you have James Cook and Josh Jacobs in that tier 3. The way I look at this, like if I can get Kyren and move him in a deal for anybody in that second tier there and I get a second round pick with it, I'm doing that, right? So that's the one way I look at this. If I've created my tiers and I'm looking at my tiers and the tiers that I like in my leagues, and I wonder, okay, if I can get a second for that, I will do that, right? Can you tier up and get into that tier 1, right? Is there a way that you can take Kyren Williams and like a first or some type of other asset and get Gibbs and any of those guys? Maybe. And that's where I would try to look and try to go pivot there. Now, as far as under their tier 2, right, in that tier 3 category, there's other guys in that range that you might be able to go target. Tyjae Spears is one of those guys I think could increase in value, right? Spears for us, we have him at 22 value-wise. In running back 22, I know that's a little lower than consensus, but he is going to shoot up in the top 12 probably at some point. Plus, maybe you get a first back, right? Those are the guys if I'm tearing down. the way I would kind of look at that deal, and that's where I would go. Now, next guy is Nico Collins. Again, I'm not picking just sell guys like that are old, right? I'm trying to find where there could be value and kind of give you actionable takeaways from that. Now, Nico's kind of risen up. He's paired with CJ Stroud. When his dynasty value is probably going to be at its highest at its peak right now, based on how they finish in the playoffs as well. You see the targets that are there. You see the production. Like, he's really good. Now, if you look at his home and away splits, though, not amazing away from Houston, out of that dome. Now, he was injured a couple games, so there's context behind that. But I think it's important to note that, his home and away splits have definitely not been the greatest. Also, Tank Dell went down, so we did see some production after Dell goes down. And what do we do with him? Like, what the heck are we doing with Nico Collins? Wide receiver 11 on Keep Trade Cut, football guys 18, and we have him at 20. So we are consistently low on him. I will say this, though, heading into the season, we had Christian Watson outside of our top 40, right? We were not a Christian Watson guy. Now, I'm not going to compare Christian Watson to Nico Collins because I do think Nico has produced, right? And we have seen that. But to me, Nico is getting severely overvalued. If I have him at wide receiver 20, he's at wide receiver 11 out there. There is a ton of value ways I can kind of move off of him. Nico for Devonta Smith, I think, is a fun deal. I'd rather have Devonta Smith in terms of my rankings and everything that I'm looking at in that offense. I do think A.J. Brown is slowly moving down. I have Devonta at 13. I'm totally okay with that. Nico Collins for Jordan Addison in an early second. Yeah, I think I like Jordan Addison in that deal. And I like that early second, right? That's that whole, if they're in the kind of similar tier and I can get a second added, that's what I would like to do. And then Nico Collins for 106 to me is a smash because I'm thinking, Jaden could be there, Brock, Roman Dunze, some of those guys at that 106 that you could really have value and you could really kind of pivot off of, and that would be a fun area there. Now, when you're looking at the tiers, we have wide receiver 14, Devonta Smith, DJ Moore, Drake London, Addison, and JSN. So for me, when I'm looking at those tiers, now these are included into like the rookies too. So just to know, some of the rookies we have combined rankings on our Patreon. So I've included those as well. That's why it's pushing a few of these down because Malik's in that top 12 for me. Also, Marvin Harrison Jr. So when we're looking at the tiers and we're kind of looking at overall what we like, if I have Nico at 20-ish in that range, T. Higgins is sitting there. If I can maybe move off a T and get an added pick, right? Tank Dell is probably the wide receiver I'd rather own on Houston. And if I can get something extra added to Tank Dell because of coming off the injury, if they add someone to the Houston Texans receiver room, I think it hurts Nico more than it does Tank Dell because it rolls. Also, another thing to not watch is this as the offseason progresses, Houston's offensive coordinator might take a head coaching job. If that happens, I mean, we're talking about maybe a shift in offensive philosophy. Those are things to kind of know, right? Now, if I can get in that tier up category like Devonta and those guys, I'm all aboard. If I can get JSN plus a lot of stuff, I would still smash that side just from a value perspective and a perceived kind of value bump that's going to come. Now, my quarterback sell, Tua Tagovailoa. I like Tua. I've got to be a Tua guy. I think that we kind of know what Tua is at. Right. And I think that he's that middling quarterback, Kirk Cousins-esque type guy that's in a great offense. But I don't know if Miami's going to look at it and be like, hey, we want to really put that second contract on the table more than maybe a franchise tag year or a 2-year kind of Daniel Jones type deal. Right. That makes me nervous as a dynasty manager. But I also don't. I think that there's ways to pivot off of Tua to get some more value. Right. We see the numbers. His numbers were fine. Like, I don't think the numbers are going to go away while he's playing from Miami. I think the question mark is how concerned are you that he's not going to be playing in Miami? Or how concerned are you that, McDaniels is going to look at this and say, Tua can't get me over the hump. I need somebody else to come in here. When you're thinking of where he's getting valued, it's between QB 13, 11, and 14, kind of in that range. But you know what? Tua for Jordan Love, I think you'd rather have Jordan Love at this point, right? I think when you're thinking of ascending assets and descending assets, I think that's really what you're looking at with both of these guys. 2 and a 204 for London, Hawkinson, and a first. If you want to pivot off of that, I hate giving up a quarterback, though, in Superflex without getting something back like that, right? And the 25 class of quarterbacks, there is a ton of question marks. We did a video on it, in terms of what that value looks like on one of the trade videos that we did, so you could see the quarterback position. I don't know. I don't mind this deal, but I also don't like kind of betting on an ACL, a wide receiver that really hasn't broken out, and in an unknown box, right? I'd probably lean the Tua side, but if I can get a quarterback added to that somehow, like a quarterback, London in a first or something like that, I think that's one way to pivot off of that. And then Tua for Justin Fields and Chris Godwin. I like the Chris Godwin and Justin Fields side, right? I think that you're getting that plus asset back in a close tier, right? So when we're talking about tiers, I think that's the thing to know. Now, when we're looking at where are our tiers at? So Trevor Lawrence, Kyler Murray, Fields, Love is probably in that opening tier in there in terms of our rankings. Then you have Tua, Dak, and Brock. To me, those are kind of the same guys. And we're looking at dynasty startups. They're generally speaking going in that second round. You got Drake, Bryce, Jaden Daniels, Deshaun Watson. And Drake and Jaden are just in there because we don't know draft capital yet. As soon as those guys go top 5, top 10, you're talking about second tier guys, right? You're thinking what Bryce was at last year, and they're not going to lose a ton of value in there. Tua has a ton of value to lose. If I can pivot off of Tua for any of those guys on the above, Love, Fields, Murray, or Lawrence, I definitely would do it. I think Lawrence is one of those ones that we're a little higher on than most in the dynasty area. When you're looking at just in general what the rankings look like, Trevor Lawrence is probably a value as well. But if I can pivot off of Tua for any of those guys plus an asset, that's something that I would definitely look at and definitely do. Now, last guy, Sam Laporta. Now, before I get Lions fans and tight end truthers to come after me, he had 120 targets this year, 889 yards, 10 touchdowns. I do expect there probably is going to be a touchdown regression. I think that the Lions are going to add to that room. I think Ben Johnson could be on, the offensive coordinator. I think Jameson Williams takes that next step. I think Gibbs can be that number 2, number 3 option in this receiving game. They have Amon-Ra. I think Laporta came into a very, very good situation this year, especially with Williams being suspended. They used him a lot and utilized him. I do expect some little bit of touchdown regression, right? And then when you're looking at where he's getting ranked, 1, 2, and 3, I think the tight ends, when you're looking at the tight ends in Dynasty, that first tier are pretty interchangeable to me, right? So we're going to go through the rankings here in a minute and look at it. But if I can move off Sam Laporta for the 105, which could be Brock Bowers, right? And you're just kind of re-rolling there. I don't necessarily love that deal. I want something extra added to that. But if you need a quarterback in Superflex and you feel like you have a tight end 2 that you're comfortable with, or you want that wide receiver and Laporta was that second round pick that you can kind of move, I'm okay with moving that pick. I'm totally all right with doing that. Then you look at Laporta for Jordan Addison, David Njoku, and it's the 203. Again, Njoku, I think, is getting undervalued right now. To me, he's my 8, tight end 8. I get Addison in a 203. I'm okay pivoting off of that. I'm okay looking and getting that value and increasing those assets on that side because I think Laporta is being overvalued at that tight end 1 kind of marker. And then Laporta in the 103 for Justin Herbert and Marquise Brown. This is what it takes to get Justin Herbert. Marquise Brown is kind of like a to me. But if you don't think that 103, if probably leaning quarterback, if you're going to lean quarterback with that pick, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, those guys that are sitting there, I think I'd rather have Herbert. The Marquise Brown is the ick for me. I'd rather get some type of other asset in there, but I understand this deal, and this is what it takes to go get Justin Herbert, who is getting undervalued too. Now, as far as kind of where our tiers are at, Andrews, Hawkinson, Laporta in there. Kyle Pitts, Kincaid, Bowers, McBride are kind of sitting in that tier, that second tier. But I don't think that there's a big discrepancy between Mark Andrews and Trey McBride. And you could even throw in Njoku if you wanted. You want to put Njoku in that second tier, you probably can. Kelsey's, falling off, Kittle, those guys. But to me, from tight end 8 to tight end 1, there is not a ton of, value lost in those areas. I still think that you can collect value and you can kind of pivot down and get more and more assets like that Addison deal. And that's the kind of the way to do it. I think, in my opinion, when you're looking at the tight ends and those cells, this might be the time to pivot off of that because I do think there could be some regression there. So those are my cells. Let me know in the comments. You think I'm crazy, dumb, all of the above. But those are guys and ways to kind of pivot off of what the trade values look like, where our tiers are on our Patreon that we have. And just kind of in general, kind of speaking, some guys right now in January that you could look to kind of pivot off of. And again, I always answer your questions, drop your trades in the chat. I love kind of chatting up with you guys. I also want to add that we are an Underdog affiliate. So you use the promo code DeDeviRal for $100, 100% instant deposit match up to 100. Been meaning to kind of throw that ad out there, but I'm terrible at ad reads. So just make sure, hey, if you want to do the Underdog, the Devi Royale is there for you. So appreciate you guys. I'll check you guys in the next video.